for it right away. Okay.
I've watched him become an icon before my very eyes. When I first met him, he just finished shooting Bloodsport. But the film hadn't been released. Nobody knew who he was. We were just trying to come up with something new for him.
One full rehearsal.
Bloodsport. Can you tell us about the process of writing Bloodsport? Have you ever thought it would become something as big as it is now?
Well, I always thought it was a great title for a movie. It was a great idea for a movie. It really ended up becoming much bigger than I could have predicted, that any of us could have predicted. When we first saw the film cut together, the very first cut was horrible, and then they recut it. They put a different editor on it. They recut it, and so I saw the second cut, and I saw it with Jean-Claude and Michelle Kesey, the whole group of us. I think maybe Frank Dux was with us too. I'm not sure, but we were all congratulating one another afterwards, saying, wow, this thing's going to be a huge hit. It's going to make X amount of dollars. We were making all kinds of predictions. However, I must say, it's become bigger than we ever expected. It's become this icon, this iconic movie. People, it's 35 years now. People are still talking about it. There are whole websites about it. Like last year, it was one of Donald Trump's favorite movies of all the weird things. It's right up there. When he talks about movies that he likes, these were interviews that he did before he was the president, but he had it right up there with Gone with the Wind and Citizen Kane. He just loved Bloodsport. And there's so many people that do. It's a guilty pleasure that a lot of people have. And for others, it's not a guilty pleasure. Like if you're into martial arts, that's your movie. That's the poster you want to have hanging on your wall is Bloodsport.
It's still one of my favorite movies. It was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid, and
right.
I have a big emotional relation to the movie.
It's really there's thousands of people throughout the world. Even though it's 35 years later, thousands of people who are just in love with that movie. There are people who love Lionheart. There are people who love Double Impact, but Bloodsport is the one, I think it's got more fans than any of my movies. It's probably got more fans than any Van Damme movie. 35 years later, people are still fans of this movie.
When it comes to martial arts movies, there's always a very thin line between fiction and reality. When I think about the martial arts magazines, now is not as usual, I think, but during the 80s and 90s, film stars were always on the covers of the martial arts magazines. And I remember one magazine in particular from my early teens, a French magazine with Frank Dux on the cover.
Right.
When was the first time you heard about Dux? How did you see Dux then, and how do you see it now in retrospect, because it became also a...
Right. Well, when I met him, it was, I think I met him in either 1980 or 1981. There was no internet back then, okay? There was no easy way to check up on people's stories. And Frank was full of a lot of stories, but he had this dojo, Dux Ninjutsu. He made all these claims in the flyer for Dux Ninjutsu. And I'm a pretty honest person, so I just take people at their word. I don't assume people are lying to me when they tell me about themselves. I don't assume, I could never imagine back then, and this has become so prevalent nowadays, but I could never imagine that somebody would say they were in the military if they weren't. That somebody could say, I fought in the Vietnam War and I won lots of medals. I won the Medal of Honor for heroism. I just figured if somebody's saying that, and I'm a veteran myself, so why would they be lying to me? In fact, if I talk to another veteran, we're going to be pretty honest with one another about our experiences. And Frank was basically just taking advantage of the fact that I was trusting him. And he was telling me all this, but it wasn't just me. He told the same story to everybody about the Kumite. He won the Kumite, like 320 matches undefeated, Medal of Honor winner. He was in the CIA, all these crazy stories.
Meet Frank Dux, the first American to win the Kumite, a deadly martial arts competition where the only rule is to win.
A lot of people liken it to a human cockfight. You've got to understand that Asia is lined with one secret society after another. And that's probably why the event has been kept secret for so long.
And just how did an American enter the secret world of the ninja? At 12 and a half, Frank had no confidence in himself, and he wanted to be the best at something. Then he met Tanaka, an ex-Kumite champ. In a relationship that transcended both culture and the centuries, Tanaka passed down the ancient secrets of the ninja. Techniques that date back 2,000 years to the time when Genghis Khan ruled the Orient and the notorious ninja warriors roamed Japan, earning the reputation as the world's first secret agents.
And all of it is bullshit, which is amazing.
The hell is a Dinmac? Death touch.
The thing the ninja is famous for, I want to point out, is what is known as the death touch. The ability to hit someone, leave no bruise, no mark whatsoever, and yet kill them or let them die hours later.
This sounds like a James Bond movie, you realize.
Well, the ninjas were the James Bonds of Japan.
Oh, okay.
So you put two of these things, and what are these called?
These
They're
are
sort
just
of a brick, too.
tile. They're real easy to break. I broke the ones over there. I'll leave these intact, in fact, for this time.
Oh, my heavens. Hey, and I will demonstrate. These two, not broken, ladies and gentlemen.
He was making up all this stuff. And it wasn't just me. He was telling this to everybody. Absolutely everybody.
His activities are so confidential that the film only touches upon the topic.
I'm not in a position to deny or confirm anything at this point in my life. All I can tell you is I'm not the type of guy who kisses and tells, and I took an oath, and I plan on obeying that oath.
And he's got a certain amount of charisma about him. And he's this big guy, and I've seen him teaching people at his school, and it seems like he does know martial arts. How could he have these schools if he didn't know something about this? And he just seemed plausible, which is what's something that's true about all the best con men in the world. Okay, they seem plausible. They seem like they're the real deal. It turned out that he made up all of the stuff. It was he's got what's called a Walter Mitty syndrome. Now, you ever hear about Walter Mitty? It was a story written, I think, in the 1930s, 1940s, about a guy who makes up all these fantastic stories about himself. And then there was a movie made based upon it with Danny Kaye called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. And Walter Mitty is this, he's this nerdy guy who makes up all these stories. He makes himself the hero of all these stories. And then he tells people these stories. Well, that's Frank Dux. Basically, he makes up all these crazy stories. He casts himself as the hero, and then he tells people, oh yeah, I did this, I did that, I won the Kumite, I won the Medal of Honor. And I would equate it to, for example, Tom Clancy, okay, who wrote all these Jack Ryan books. Now, Tom Clancy was never in the military, but he did a lot of research about the military. He wrote these military and CIA, and wrote all these Jack Ryan books about this heroic CIA agent, which is fine. And they've been made into movies, but Tom Clancy never said, I'm Jack Ryan, actually. I used a different name in my books, but that's me. I did all that stuff. Well, Frank Dux basically made up a character named Frank Dux, same name, okay, and made up all these stories about this guy named Frank Dux. But rather than writing them down and saying they were fiction, he told this to people and said, it's all true. And then you got to admit, it's a pretty good story. And beyond him telling me these stories, he told these stories to the editor of Black Belt magazine, a guy named John Stewart. And John Stewart, you couldn't do that much research back then without the internet. Anyways, John Stewart asked a few people, and he thought maybe there's some plausibility to this, but it's a good story. It's a good story for my magazine. So he published a whole article about Frank Dux and the Kumite called Kumite, A Learning Experience. So this was something that Frank had shown me also. In addition to having the martial arts dojo and the brochures talking about all of his accomplishments and abilities, I read this article in Black Belt. Well, if it's an article in Black Belt magazine, written by the editor of Black Belt magazine, well, who am I to say it's bullshit? Okay, I don't know anything about martial arts. I don't know anything about the martial arts world. I barely know. I had not even seen Enter the Dragon when I met Frank and was listening to all these stories. So it seemed somewhat plausible. It sounds crazy, but there's a lot of crazy stories. You know, truth is stranger than fiction many times. So that was pretty much his proof that there was some validity to the story. The fact that Black Belt magazine did a whole write-up, and they had a picture of Frank with his trophy. He had this huge trophy. It turned out that he had the trophy made at a trophy shop just a few blocks from his house. A reporter for the LA Times did an investigation and even found the receipt for the trophy. So despite all this, Frank is one of these people that will just keep talking. Will say everybody's lying except me. They're all trying to put me down. They're my competitors. They're my enemies. But all of this is true. So anyways, it was a good story. And what really got me excited about writing it was when he told me that we used to call it Bloodsport. Got very bloody out there on the mat. So our nickname for the event was Bloodsport. And I thought, wow, is that a good title for a movie? And then I said, not only is that title great, but all these stories you've been telling me about the Kumite and winning the Kumite, that's a great movie right there. And we should write this up. Well, we never did end up writing it, Frank and I, okay? We just talked about it. And then I met a producer named Mark DeSalle, and I was cutting a movie at some editing facility. Mark was cutting a movie, and he heard that I was a writer, so he took me out to lunch one day. And he had an idea for a martial arts movie called Kickboxer. That's what he wanted to talk to me about. He wanted me to write Kickboxer for him. And I didn't really I liked the title, but I didn't love the storyline for Kickboxer. And I said, look, Mark, if you want to do a martial arts movie, I got another idea, which I think is a better idea. It's called Bloodsport. Well, he instantly lit up when he heard that title. Everybody does. Everybody loves that title, Bloodsport. I told him about Frank Dux, the Kumite, and all that. A few weeks later, I introduced him to Frank, and he ended up hiring me to write the screenplay. And he ended up paying Frank for the rights to his, quote, life story, okay? And Frank didn't have to prove anything to him beyond that article in Black Belt magazine. That was that was pretty much like his passport telling the story. If Black Belt says it's true, then it's got to be true. Who am I to disprove it? So, so I wrote the screenplay, and Mark got the movie set up, and we did not have a star for the movie. We wrote it, there was no star in mind, just, this is a great idea for a movie. And he took it to Cannon Films, and then Menachem Golan happened to meet Jean-Claude Van Damme on the street in LA, and Jean-Claude, so right when Menachem was looking for somebody to star in Bloodsport, here comes Jean-Claude out of the blue, throws a kick at Menachem. You know, he used to do this with everybody. He would throw a kick at your face and miss you by an inch or two, which is pretty impressive. So he did that to Menachem. And Menachem was with his assistant, Karen. And apparently he just said, he told Jean-Claude, we're going to send you a script called Bloodsport. You come by my office tomorrow. And basically that's how that got on track to become a movie. And how Jean-Claude got on track to, that was his first step to becoming a movie star.
How much of the movie follows your actual story, and how much goes off on a path?
It's very important to note when you make a movie, obviously, that you have to please visually. Mm-hmm. And in the sense of the visual, they have certain idiosyncrasies that are not in line. But the spirit of the movie, the spirit of the event, the spirit of the fighters is 100% the truth.
It's a funny story. I always want to meet Menachem Golan because, you know, it's #1 action film in the States right now, especially on karate, ninja film and everything. So I call Canon and I say, I've got an important meeting with Menachem. He know me, I'm leaving tomorrow for France. And I didn't tell the truth, by the way, but Menachem is a very curious person. So he said, who's that guy? He know me? I don't know him. I want to see that guy. So when I met him the first time, I did my split.
Right.
I show my muscles, and I say I'm the best, and I'm not too expensive right now. Take me now. He said, you got it. This is Bloodsport.
Wow. A lot of people are comparing you to Bruce Lee. How do you feel about that?
I think Bruce Lee is Bruce Lee, and Jean-Claude Van Damme is Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Bloodsport, the true story of a kumite and the people who fought in it.
I guess what I'm really proud of is that it isn't a story about violence. It's not, you know, it's a story about human beings and faith and about determination and respect. And that's what I've run my life by, and that's what this movie's about.
Mysterious ways, because even though all the problems with the story of Frank Dux, the reality is that he not only inspired a great script and a great movie, but he also inspired thousands or millions of people all around the world with the story of the kumite records and the chaos, all that stuff. It's fun.
I have spoken to many of these people, and there are literally thousands of people all over the world who fell in love with that movie and were inspired by that movie to take up martial arts. So it's had that effect.
Yes.
And it's still an extremely popular movie, and people still love the movie. They still get inspired to take karate classes because of that movie.
The movie, it's up there for martial arts fans, up there with Enter the Dragon and all those classics. It's a cult movie, and during the 80s and the 90s, it was just crazy, the Van Damme craze. So
I think I actually think the two martial arts movies that people talk about as far as being the best are Bloodsport and Enter the Dragon. Now I'm going to give you my opinion, which is that Bloodsport is a much better martial arts movie than Enter the Dragon, because Bloodsport is just all about the tournament. Basically, the movie starts, all these fighters, where are you going? I'm going to the kumite. movie ends. Jean-Claude's character has won, basically defeated his final opponent, Bolo. That's one thing. Actually, it's funny. Those two movies both have Bolo Young playing like a bad guy fighter. Then Jean-Claude gets on the plane, goes home, movie's over. Now, Enter the Dragon is really more of it's like a spy movie, a cop movie, a caper movie. With some guy has an island, and he's trafficking humans. He's trafficking drugs. So it's this crime caper where basically Bruce Lee has to go infiltrate. He has to enter the dragon and bring this crime lord down. That's what the movie's really about. And the crime lord happens to have some tournaments that he sponsors on his island, but that's it. So it's not about and Bruce Lee, of course, the few fights that he has are fantastic. But Bloodsport is all about the fights. The entire movie is basically all about the tournament. And I believe it really set a trend because there were a lot of tournament movies after that. There really wasn't a martial arts movie like it beforehand. That was, there would be martial arts fights in Asian movies, not. There really weren't any American films quite like that until Enter the Dragon. But even Enter the Dragon, it's not a tournament movie. It's a crime caper. It's a spy movie. So as far as being the ultimate martial arts movie, I'm going to bang my own drum and say it's Bloodsport.
It had a huge influence also in pop culture in general. When we think about Bloodsport, we always think about the video games of the time, how they get influenced and affected by Bloodsport also, because it was a pop phenomenon. Right, yeah, well, Mortal Kombat and all of those were pretty much based on Bloodsport. If they were a tournament game, it was all about a tournament, different fighters fighting one another, that was Bloodsport. It all came back to Bloodsport because Enter the Dragon was not that movie. Enter the Dragon was Bruce Lee has to infiltrate this island and stop this crime lord. Bloodsport, it's all about let's pair up this guy and this guy, then let's pair up these guys, and we'll find out who the ultimate champion is at the end. And it really created this whole subgenre of martial arts tournament movies. Regarding Jean-Claude Van Damme. Jean-Claude Van Damme is one of the last big action heroes, and your work and his work are always hand in hand. We cannot dissociate one name from the other. Can you tell us a bit about your relation and how it developed and how it is right now? Right. I was working on that Foreign Legion script for Stallone. Yes. And Jean-Claude would come to my office and we'd basically talk about some phrases I could use there. And we started talking about the French Foreign Legion. And before you know it, we're writing Lionheart, and it's got a French Foreign Legion angle to it. So we just hit it off right away when we first met. I first spoke to him when he was shooting Bloodsport. Frank Dux had called me from Hong Kong, and the producer was making a lot of changes to the script, and they weren't happy with the changes. So they called me, and that's when I first talked to Jean-Claude, and there wasn't much I could do for them. I was here in LA, they were in Hong Kong. But we promised, look, when you're back in LA, you've got to come by and see me. Let's get together in person. So he did that. I think it was maybe the day or two after he got back to LA, he called me, came to my apartment. He and his wife came over. And just coincidentally, his wife was pregnant and my wife was pregnant at the same time. So they really hit it off well also. So we all got to be good friends. And then Jean-Claude had this
And there are other things that happened too. Like I introduced Jean-Claude to Sam Raimi, Sam and Jean-Claude had a really great idea for a science fiction action movie called Atlas. And it was kind of like Spartacus. We call it Spartacus in Space, but it was basically titled Atlas. And we had gotten this set up. It was going to be Dino De Laurentiis and Raffaele De Laurentiis were going to produce it. Sam Raimi and Rob Tappert were going to be the actual line producers. They were going to be on the set. Dino was going to be executive producer, come up with the money. I co-wrote it. I introduced Jean-Claude and Sam to a friend of mine named Chuck Farr. And Chuck was a former Navy SEAL. And Chuck and I wrote the script. Chuck went on to do lots of stuff. He went on to write for a few things for Sam Raimi, like Darkman. He wrote Darkman and Hard Target. So we all kind of came together. Everybody's head was in the same place, and we got to be good friends and ended up doing more things with one another. But then Jean-Claude got a deal with this producer named Sunil Shah, and Sunil had produced a movie that Jean-Claude co-starred in called Black Eagle. And Sunil saw the possibilities in Jean-Claude and gave him a deal to star in a movie. And Jean-Claude had an idea for a movie at the time called Wrong Bet. And so he wanted me to, he knew that I believed in him, that I believed that he could be a movie star, could be an actor. And so he convinced Sunil to let me direct this movie also.
Jean-Claude Harrison, action! Slowly, guys.
Co-scripting and directing Lionheart is Sheldon Lettich,
Hey, cut!
the author of Bloodsport.
I'd like these girls, I'd like people to press in even closer. I'd like another girl on that side.
Jean-Claude and I had originally come up with the basic idea for this years ago. We both liked a picture called Hard Times, Charles Bronson picture directed by Walter Hill. We were just trying to come up with something new for him, where he wouldn't have to pretend he was an American, he wouldn't have to pretend this, pretend that. He could, he could speak with his accent, he could pretty much be himself.
Hollywood!
We wanted to make the fighters radically different from one another. And not just different, we wanted them to be unusual. We wanted something that nobody had ever seen before.
To bring the complex and dangerous fight scenes to life, Jean-Claude worked closely with fight choreographer Frank Dux.
We make this dynamic duo and we bring together fights and movement, and much like ballet.
But Van Damme is working for a career that goes beyond his tough guy image.
I wasn't happy in Belgium. I was making lots of money. I owned a gym, big gymnasium. But I sold everything and I came here because I just want to do it so badly. It was before karate, before everything else. I wanted to become an actor, not a star, an actor.
Harrison and Jean-Claude, action!
Because I love acting.
So that was the first of our 4 collaborations. I've actually contributed to a lot of Jean-Claude's movies, but I directed 4 of them, and that was the first.